Imagine this. You've got a quiet ranch just outside city limits, your own slice of peace with wide open fields and a sturdy gate to keep it private. But then, your HOA's self-appointed queen, let's call her Karen, decides your gate is her personal shortcut. Every day she barrels through, ignoring your signs, your pleas, even your security cameras, leaving your property trashed and your patience in tatters. This isn't just about a gate, it's about disrespect, power trips, and a neighborhood board that backs her up. I tried reasoning, I tried warnings, but nothing stopped her. So, I came up with a plan. A trap so clever, so perfectly executed, that it left Karen and the entire HOA speechless. Stick around, because this story of standing up to a bully with brains instead of brawn will leave you cheering. You won't believe how I turned the tables on them. My name's Ethan Caldwell. And in the summer of 2023, I bought a 10-acre ranch on the outskirts of Boise, Idaho. It wasn't a sprawling estate, just a modest piece of land with a small farmhouse, a barn, and a couple of horses I'd always dreamed of owning. The property sat at the edge of Sagebrush Estates, a semi-rural neighborhood with a mix of ranches and suburban homes. The appeal was the quiet. No city noise, just the sound of wind through the sagebrush and the occasional neigh from my horses, Daisy and Buck. A single dirt road ran through my land, connecting the main highway to a back entrance of the neighborhood, and my gate, a heavy steel one I'd installed myself, kept it private. Or so I thought. When I moved in, I knew Sagebrush Estates had an HOA. The realtor, a cheerful woman named Linda, downplayed it. She said, "They mostly handle the community park and road maintenance. You're far enough out. They won't bother you much." I signed the papers, figuring a few rules wouldn't hurt. The HOA binder was thin compared to others I'd seen. No crazy restrictions on paint colors or lawn ornaments, just basics about noise, trash, and common areas. I thought I'd dodged a bullet. Enter Karen. That illusion shattered about a month in. I was fixing a fence post one morning when a white SUV sped down my dirt road, kicking up dust that stung my eyes. The driver didn't slow down, even as Daisy spooked and reared in the pasture. I waved my arms, thinking they'd made a mistake, but the SUV barreled through my open gate and disappeared toward the neighborhood. I checked my trail camera later, a cheap one I'd set up to monitor wildlife, and saw the same SUV, driven by a woman in her 50s with sunglasses and a tight ponytail. She didn't even glance at my private property sign. The next day, it happened again. Same SUV, same reckless speed. This time, I was ready. I stood by the gate, waving her down. She rolled down her window, barely stopping. "This road's a shortcut to the community entrance," she snapped, like I was the one inconveniencing her. "I'm Karen Wheeler, HOA Vice President. Your gate's blocking access." I explained it was my land, my gate, and not a public road. She scoffed. "The HOA is reviewing easements. Keep it open or you'll hear from us." Before I could respond, she floored it, leaving me in a cloud of dust. I dug into the HOA rules that night. The binder mentioned nothing about easements or public access through private property. I called the HOA management company, Clearview Associations, and spoke to a board-sounding rep named Greg. "No easement exists," he confirmed after checking. "Your deed's clear. That road's yours." I felt relieved, but Greg warned me, "Karen's persistent. She's been on the board for years. Good luck." Sure enough, the next week, I got an email from the HOA, a $100 fine for obstructing community access by locking my gate. I was stunned. My land wasn't their highway. I replied, citing my deed and Greg's confirmation, but got a form response. All violations must be addressed at the next board meeting. Meanwhile, Karen's SUV kept using my road, sometimes twice a day. My trail camera caught her smirking once, like she knew she was untouchable. My horses were getting stressed, the dirt road was rutted from her tires, and I found beer cans tossed near my gate, not mine. I tried talking to neighbors. Most were sympathetic, but scared to cross Karen. "She's got the board in her pocket," said Mike, a retiree who lived across the street. "Last year, she fined me $200 for a birdhouse she didn't like." Another neighbor, Jenny, whispered that Karen's husband was a lawyer, which made people hesitant to fight her. I wasn't intimidated. I dealt with bullies before, but I knew reasoning wasn't working. The first stand. I decided to lock the gate. It was a heavy-duty steel model with a chain and padlock built to keep out trespassers. I added a bigger "No Trespassing" sign and upgraded my trail camera to one with night vision. For a few days, it worked. Karen's SUV stopped at the gate, and I saw her on camera, fuming, before turning around. I thought I'd won. Then came the second fine, $250 for non-compliance with community directives. The letter claimed my gate violated community standards and demanded I remove it or face legal action. I called Greg again, who sighed. Karen's pushing this through the board. They're meeting next week. You can appeal there. I realized this wasn't just about a shortcut. It was personal. Karen was testing me, and I wasn't about to back down. That night, I sat with Sarah, my wife, over coffee. She was worried. "Ethan, we can't afford endless fines," she said. "Our savings were tight after the move. Maybe we just let her use the road." But I couldn't stomach it. This was our home, our land. I started researching Idaho property law, HOA regulations, and even Karen's background. If she wanted a fight, I'd be ready. Not with fists, but with something smarter. The HOA meeting. The HOA board meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday evening at the Sagebrush Estates Community Center, a squat building with fake wood paneling and a flickering fluorescent light in the lobby. I spent the week preparing, my kitchen table buried under printouts of Idaho property law, my deed, and emails from Greg at Clearview Associations confirming my road wasn't public. Sarah was nervous. "Ethan, don't lose your temper," she said, squeezing my hand as we drove to the meeting. "These people love power." I nodded, but inside I was fuming. Karen's SUV had roared through my gate again that morning, clipping the edge and bending a hinge. My trail camera caught her license plate clear as day. The meeting room smelled of stale coffee and air freshener. About 20 homeowners sat in folding chairs, most looking bored or intimidated. The board sat at a long table up front. Karen, with her trademark ponytail and a clipboard, Tom, the president, a retired car salesman with a fake tan, and 3 others who seemed to nod at whatever Karen said. I'd brought my documents in a folder, feeling like I was walking into a courtroom. When my turn came to speak, I stood, cleared my throat, and laid out my case. "My road is private property, per my deed," I said, holding up the paperwork. "There's no easement, no public access. I've been fined twice, $100 and $250 for locking my gate, which is my right. Karen Wheeler's been driving through my land without permission, damaging my property. I want the fines dropped and her trespassing to stop." I passed copies of my deed and trail camera photos to the board. Karen didn't even blink. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, her voice dripping with condescension, "your gate obstructs a critical access route for the community. Sagebrush Estates had a history of using that road, and your refusal to cooperate violates our covenants." She slid a page from the HOA binder across the table, highlighting a vague clause about maintaining community access. It was flimsy, and I knew it. I pointed out that Greg from Clearview had confirmed no easement existed, but Tom cut me off. "We'll take this under advisement," he said, barely glancing at my evidence. "Next item." I sat down, blood pounding in my ears. Sarah whispered, "They're not listening." She was right. The board moved on to complaints about unapproved mailboxes and someone's excessive Christmas lights. As we left, Karen caught my eye and smiled. Not a friendly smile, but one that said, "I'm in charge here." Digging deeper. Back home, I couldn't sleep. Karen's smugness, the board's dismissal, the fines piling up, it was eating at me. I opened my laptop and started digging. First, I searched Idaho property law again. The state's statutes were clear. Without a recorded easement, my road was mine. Trespassing was illegal, and I could sue for damages, but suits were expensive, and I wasn't ready to go there yet. I needed a strategy that hit harder, smarter. Next, I looked into Karen. Social media was a goldmine. Her Facebook was public, filled with posts about keeping sagebrush estates pristine and photos of her at HOA events, always front and center. She'd been vice president for 6 years, and her husband, Richard, was indeed a lawyer, a small-time real estate attorney with a flashy website. I found a LinkedIn post where she bragged about streamlining the HOA's fine system, which explained the clipboard guy's weekly inspections. Neighbors' complaints on a local forum confirmed she was relentless. One got fined for a weedy lawn during a drought, another for a car parked 10 minutes past the visitor limit. Then I stumbled on something interesting. A 2019 county planning document mentioned Sagebrush Estate's original layout. The dirt road through my land predated the neighborhood, but was never deeded as a public right-of-way. The developer had intended it as a private access for the ranch, my ranch. Karen's community access claim was a lie, and I had proof. Rallying allies. I knew I couldn't fight alone. The HOA board had power because most homeowners stayed quiet. I started talking to neighbors carefully. Mike, the retiree, was an easy ally. Over beers in his garage, he told me Karen had once threatened to foreclose on his house over unpaid fines. She's got Tom wrapped around her finger, he said, and the management company doesn't care as long as dues come in. Mike agreed to back me at the next meeting. Jenny, the mom across the street, was hesitant but fed up. Her teenage son had been fined for skateboarding in the cul-de-sac. Karen watches everyone like a hawk, she said. It's creepy. I showed her the county document and my deed. Her eyes widened. So she's just making this up? I nodded. Jenny promised to talk to other moms in her book club who were also tired of the HOA's overreach. I also reached out to Mr. Jenkins, the elderly neighbor with the faded mailbox. He was frail but sharp, and he hated Karen. She made my wife cry over our rose bushes, he said, his voice shaking. Said they were non-compliant. We paid $150 to avoid a lien. I promised him I was working on a plan, though I wasn't sure what it was yet. His gratitude gave me resolve. The trap begins to form. By now, Karen's SUV was a daily nuisance. My trail camera caught her driving through at odd hours, 6 a.m., 10 p.m., even 2 a.m. once. She'd started bringing others, a man I recognized as Tom and another board member, Linda, who always looked nervous. They weren't just using the road, they were flaunting it, like my gate was a challenge they'd already won. The bent hinge was now a cracked post, and I found tire tracks veering into my pasture, spooking Daisy again. I decided to up the ante. I installed a second lock on the gate, a combination padlock, harder to pick, and a new sign, "Private property, trespassers will be prosecuted." I also upgraded my trail camera to a 4K model with cloud storage set to alert my phone. The next morning, my phone buzzed at 7:15 a.m. Karen's SUV was at the gate, idling. She got out, rattled the lock, and kicked the gate, cursing. I saved the footage. That's when the idea hit me. Karen thought she was untouchable because the HOA backed her, but she was breaking the law. Trespassing, property damage, maybe even harassment. I couldn't just keep locking the gate. She'd find ways around it, and the fines would keep coming. I needed to expose her, not just to the HOA, but to the whole neighborhood, in a way that made her power crumble. I started sketching a plan, gather indictable evidence, rally the community, and use the HOA's own rules against her. It wasn't a physical trap, that'd be too risky, but a legal and social one built on her arrogance. I called a friend, Matt, who worked at a local law firm. Not a lawyer, but a paralegal who knew his way around HOAs. Over lunch, he explained Idaho's HOA laws. They can't enforce rules that contradict state law, he said. If your road's private, they've got no leg to stand on. But you need proof of trespassing and damage, and you need the board to admit they're wrong. That's the hard part. He suggested requesting HOA financial records, fines, budgets, everything. If Karen's abusing the system, it'll show up there. The first pushback. I filed a formal complaint with Clearview Associations, attaching my deed, the county document, and trail camera screenshots. I demanded the fines be rescinded and Karen be investigated for trespassing. Greg's response was curt, "We'll review your submission." Meanwhile, I got a third fine, $500 for ongoing obstruction.
Sarah was livid. "This is extortion," she said, but I told her to trust me. The fines were piling up, but so was my evidence. That weekend, I hosted a small barbecue, just Mike, Jenny, Mr. Jenkins, and a few others. I showed them the footage of Karen kicking my gate and the county document proving the road was mine. "She's lying to everyone," I said, "and the board is letting her." Mike slammed his beer down. "I'm done with this. Let's vote her out." Jenny nodded. "My book club is in. We're sick of her." Mr. Jenkins, quiet until then, said, "I've got old letters from her. Threats, all signed. Use 'em." I felt a spark of hope. The trap was taking shape, but I had to be careful. Karen had power, connections, and a lawyer husband. I needed more than a few angry neighbors. I needed the whole neighborhood to see her for what she was.
The evidence mounts. The 3 weeks leading up to the next HOA board meeting felt like a chess game. I was determined to outmaneuver Karen, but every move had to be calculated. My trail cameras, now 2, one of the gate and one hidden in the juniper tree, were working overtime. Karen's white SUV appeared almost daily, sometimes with Tom or Linda from the board in tow. The footage was gold. Karen rattling the gate, tossing cigarette butts onto my property, even keying the no trespassing sign once when she thought no one was watching. I saved every clip to a cloud drive, time-stamped and organized. By mid-September 2023, I had over 30 instances of trespassing, plus photos of damage, a cracked gate post, rutted dirt, and trampled sagebrush near my pasture. I also started documenting the fines. The third $500 fine arrived, followed by a fourth, $750 for failure to resolve ongoing violations. My total was now $1,600, and Sarah was panicking. "Ethan, we can't keep paying these," she said one night, her voice tight as she balanced our budget. "What if they put a lien on the house?" I hugged her, promising I had a plan, but I felt the pressure too. Our savings were dwindling, and the HOA's threats were escalating. I met with Matt, my paralegal friend, again at a diner in Boise. I showed him the footage and the county document proving my road was private. "This is solid," he said, sipping his coffee. "Trespassing, property damage, you could file a civil suit. But the HOA's banking on you giving up. They know legal battles are expensive." He suggested requesting the HOA's financial records under Idaho law, which allows homeowners to inspect association budgets and fine distributions. "If Karen's pocketing fines or misusing funds, it'll show up," he said. "But be ready, she'll fight dirty." I sent a formal request to Clearview Associations for the HOA's financials, citing Idaho Code Section 55115. Greg, the rep, sounded annoyed but promised to comply within 30 days. I also filed a police report for trespassing, attaching my trail camera footage. The officer, a gruff guy named Deputy Harris, was sympathetic but cautious. "This is civil, not criminal unless you can prove intent or major damage. Get more evidence and I'll talk to her." It wasn't much, but it was a start. Building the coalition. My barbecue had sparked something. Mike, Jenny, and Mr. Jenkins were now my core allies, and they'd been spreading the word. Jenny's book club, 8 moms who met weekly, was furious about Karen's reign. One, Lisa, had been fined $300 for a non-approved fence color. Another got hit for her kid's basketball hoop. "She's like a dictator," Maria said at our next meeting, held in Mike's garage to avoid prying eyes. "We need to vote her out." Mike had a contact at the county clerk's office, a friend named Susan who dealt with HOA disputes before. She confirmed my road was private and offered to pull records of Sagebrush Estate's original covenants. "Sometimes these HOAs overstep their charters," she said. "If they're fining outside their rules, you can challenge the board's authority." Susan emailed me a copy of the 1998 covenants, which had no mention of my road as a community asset. Another piece of the puzzle. Mr. Jenkins brought something else. A stack of old HOA letters, all signed by Karen, threatening fines or liens for minor infractions. One, dated 2020, demanded he remove a bird feeder because it attracted vermin. Another fined a neighbor for a faded welcome mat. "She's been doing this for years," he said, his hands trembling. Nobody fights back because they're scared. I promised him we'd change that. We started a group chat, nicknamed the Gatekeepers, to coordinate. Jenny suggested a petition to recall Karen from the board, which required 20% of homeowners' signatures per the HOA bylaws. We drafted it carefully. We, the undersigned, called for the removal of Karen Wheeler as HOA vice president due to abuse of power and unauthorized fines. By the end of the week, we had 15 signatures. A good start, but we needed 40 to force a vote. The setback. Just when I thought we were gaining ground, Karen struck back. One morning, I woke to find my gate wide open. The combination padlock was gone, the chain cut with bolt cutters. My trail camera had been ripped from the juniper tree, its lens smashed. I checked the cloud footage. At 3:47 a.m., a figure in a hoodie, impossible to identify, had cut the lock and trashed the camera. My heart sank. The second camera at the gate caught Karen's SUV driving through at 6:12 a.m., right after. She wasn't in the hoodie, but the timing was too perfect. I called Deputy Harris, who came out to take a report. "Looks like vandalism," he said, inspecting the gate, "but without clear footage of the perp, it's hard to pin on anyone." I showed him Karen's morning drive-through, but he shook his head. "Circumstantial. Keep documenting." I replaced the lock and camera that day, spending $200 I didn't have. Sarah was furious. "This is getting dangerous, Ethan. What if they hurt the horses next?" That wasn't the worst of it. 2 days later, I got a certified letter from Richard Wheeler, Karen's lawyer husband. It was a cease and desist, accusing me of harassing Karen with baseless trespassing claims and defamatory statements in my HOA complaint. It threatened a lawsuit if I didn't remove my gate and pay the outstanding fines. The letter was on fancy letterhead, but Matt laughed when I showed it to him. "It's a scare tactic," he said. "No judge would take this seriously, but it means she's nervous." The setback shook me, but it also lit a fire. Karen wasn't just bullying me, she was escalating to protect her power. I realized the trap had to be bigger than exposing her trespassing. I needed to dismantle her influence entirely, and that meant turning the neighborhood against her. Refining the trap. I sat down with Mike and Jenny to regroup. The petition was gaining traction, but we needed a knockout blow. Mike suggested a public confrontation at the next board meeting, but I wanted something subtler, something that used Karen's own tactics against her. I remembered Matt's advice about the HOA financials. If Karen was misusing fines or the board was breaking rules, we could force a state investigation. Idaho law allows the Attorney General to audit HOA for fraud or mismanagement. I also had an idea inspired by Mr. Jenkins' letters. Karen's threats were always in writing, signed with her name and title. If I could get her to overstep publicly, say at the board meeting, I could record it and share it with the neighborhood. The gatekeepers agreed to help. Jenny's book club started a whisper campaign, casually mentioning Karen's trespassing to other neighbors. "Did you know she's driving through Ethan's ranch?" they'd say at the park or grocery store. The goal wasn't gossip, it was planting seeds of doubt. I also installed a third trail camera hidden in a fake rock near the gate and upgraded my gate with a heavier chain. If Karen wanted to play dirty, I'd be ready. The new camera caught Karen's SUV again, this time with Tom in the passenger seat laughing as they sped through. I also noticed something odd. A pickup truck, not Karen's, used the road late at night. The plate was blurry, but it looked like one of the board members. Were they all in on this? The neighborhood stirs. By late September, the petition had 25 signatures, halfway to our goal. Lisa from the book club reported that 2 neighbors had confronted Karen about the fines, and she'd brushed them off, saying, "The board knows what's best." But cracks were showing. At a soccer game, I overheard parents grumbling about the HOA's Gestapo tactics. One dad, Brian, joined the gatekeepers after Karen fined him for a non-compliant shed. "I'm done with her," he said. "What do you need?" I told Brian about the board meeting. "Bring your shed fine and tell everyone you know to come." We needed a crowd to pressure the board. I also reached out to Susan at the county clerk's office, who sent me more documents. A 2015 HOA audit that flagged irregular fine distributions. It wasn't proof of fraud, but it was suspicious. Karen had been treasurer then. If the new financials showed similar issues, we'd have her.
As the meeting approached, I felt a mix of nerves and excitement. Karen thought she'd scared me off with her lawyer's letter, but I was building a case she couldn't ignore. The trap was still vague, a mix of exposing her trespassing, proving financial misconduct, and rallying the neighborhood to oust her, but it was coming together. I just needed one more push to make it undeniable.
The calm before the storm. The days leading up to the October 2023 HOA board meeting felt like the quiet before a thunderstorm. The gatekeepers, our little rebellion of Mike, Jenny, Mr. Jenkins, Brian, and a dozen others, had grown to 35 signatures on the petition to recall Karen Wheeler. We were just 5 short of forcing a vote to oust her as vice president. The neighborhood was buzzing, though most kept it hushed. Karen's reign had left people cautious, but the whispers were spreading. She's fining Ethan for his own land? Did you hear she cut his lock? The tide was turning, and I could feel it. My trail cameras were still catching Karen's white SUV speeding through my ranch gate, though she'd slowed down since the vandalism. The fake rock camera worked perfectly, capturing her license plate and even Tom, the HOA president, riding along twice. I'd also documented new damage, a bent gate hinge, more rutted tracks, and a broken fence rail where her SUV had veered too close to my pasture. Daisy, my mare, was skittish now, and I worried about her safety. The fines had climbed to $2,100, and Sarah was on edge. "Ethan, this has to stop," she said one night, her voice trembling as she looked at our bank statement. "We're not rich enough for this fight." I promised her it was almost over. The trap was nearly ready. The HOA financial records arrived from Clearview Associations the day before the meeting. I'd expected a few pages, but it was a 200-page PDF. Budgets, fine logs, and expense reports from 2020 to 2023. I stayed up until 2 a.m. combing through it with Matt, my paralegal friend, over Zoom. What we found was dynamite. The HOA had collected $45,000 in fines over 3 years, but only $12,000 was accounted for in community improvements, like the park or road maintenance. The rest went to vague categories like administrative fees and consulting services. One line item stood out: $8,000 paid to Wheeler Consulting LLC in 2022. Karen's husband Richard owned a real estate law firm, but this looked like a shell company. "This could be fraud," Matt said, his eyes wide. "You need to bring this to the meeting." I also got a call from Susan at the county clerk's office. She dug up a 2005 HOA amendment that required board members to disclose conflicts of interest, like payments to family businesses. Karen had never mentioned Wheeler Consulting. "If she's funneling money, it's a violation of Idaho law," Susan said. "You could report it to the Attorney General." My plan was coming together: expose Karen's trespassing, reveal the financial misconduct, and use the petition to force her out. The trap wasn't just about my gain anymore. It was about dismantling her entire power structure. The board meeting showdown. The community center was packed that night, over 50 homeowners, double the usual turnout. Word had spread about my fight with Karen, and the gatekeepers had rallied their friends. Mike brought his poker buddies, Jenny her book club, and Brian the soccer dads. Even Mr. Jenkins showed up, leaning on his cane, his eyes fierce. I'd brought my laptop, a projector, and a USB drive with my evidence: trail camera footage, the county document, the financial records, and Karen's threatening letters. I'd also borrowed a wireless microphone from Brian's kids' school play to ensure everyone heard me. This was my shot. The board sat at their usual table: Karen, Tom, Linda, and 2 others, all looking uneasy at the crowd. Tom opened the meeting, rushing through the agenda: pool maintenance, holiday light rules, clearly hoping to avoid me. But when public comments opened, I stood, mic in hand. "I'm Ethan Caldwell. I'm here about the fines on my property and Karen Wheeler's illegal trespassing." The room went quiet. I plugged my laptop into the projector and started my presentation. First, I showed the county document proving my road was private, no easement. Then the trail camera footage, 30 clips of Karen's SUV speeding through, keying my sign, tossing trash. Gasps rippled through the crowd when I showed the vandalism, the cut lock, the smashed camera. "This is my land," I said. "Karen's been trespassing for months, damaging my property, and the board's fining me for locking my gate."
Karen's face was red, but she kept her composure. "Mr. Caldwell, you're out of order," she snapped. "Your gate blocks community access, and we've addressed this." But I didn't back down. "There's no easement, Karen. I checked with the county, and these fines," I held up the $2,100 in notices, "are baseless. I've filed a police report for trespassing and vandalism." The crowd murmured and Tom banged his gavel. "That's enough," he said, but I wasn't done. I switched to the financial records, projecting the $45,000 fine total and the $8,000 to Wheeler Consulting. "Karen, care to explain why your husband's company got paid thousands of dollars while homeowners like Mr. Jenkins are fined for bird feeders?" The room erupted. Shouts, questions, even applause. Karen stood, her voice shaking. "This is slander! Those payments were for legal services." But I had her old letters, signed and threatening, which I passed around. "This is not leadership," I said. "It's abuse." Tom tried to shut me down, but the crowd wasn't having it. Jenny stood and presented the petition, now with 42 signatures. "We demand a recall vote for Karen Wheeler," she said. The board looked stunned. Linda, the nervous board member, stammered, We'll review the petition." Karen glared at me, her eyes like daggers. I'd hit a nerve, but I knew she'd retaliate. The backlash. The next morning, my gate was vandalized again. Paint splattered across the no trespassing sign, the chain cut. The fake rock camera caught a figure in a ski mask at 4 a.m., but Karen's SUV didn't appear that day. I reported it to Deputy Harris, who was not taking me seriously. "This is escalating," he said. "I'll patrol your road tonight." I replaced the chain, but the damage was done. Another $150 out of pocket. Worse, I got an email from Clearview Associations. The board had rejected the petition, claiming procedural errors in the signatures. Mike was furious. "They're stalling," he said. "Karen's got them scared." Jenny reported that 2 book club members had backed out, citing pressure from Karen's friends. I also noticed a new face driving through my gate, not Karen, but a young guy in a pickup truck I recognized from the board's entourage. The plates matched a board member's son. They were doubling down, testing me. Sarah was at her breaking point. "Ethan, I'm scared," she admitted, holding our daughter's hand. "What if they target us next? The kids?" I felt a pang of guilt. My fight was costing us money, peace, safety, but I couldn't stop now. Karen's arrogance, the board's corruption, the neighborhood's fear, it had to end. Tightening the trap. I regrouped with the gatekeepers at Mike's garage. The petition's rejection was a blow, but we had momentum. Mike suggested a neighborhood-wide meeting, outside the HOA's control. "We'll invite everyone," he said. "Show the footage, the financials, everything." Jenny volunteered her backyard, big enough for 50 people. We set it for the following Saturday, before the board could meet again. I printed flyers, simple, professional, with a QR code linking to a private website I'd built. The site had the trail camera footage, the county document, and a summary of the financial irregularities, all anonymized to avoid legal trouble. Jenny's book club distributed the flyers, slipping them into mailboxes at night. I also reached out to Linda, the nervous board member. I'd noticed her discomfort at the meeting. She'd barely spoken, avoiding eye contact. I found her number in the HOA directory and called. "Linda, I know you're not like Karen. You see what's happening. Help us stop it." She hesitated, her voice shaky. I can't talk. Karen's watching everyone." But she didn't hang up. "Check the 2021 budget," she whispered before disconnecting. I pulled it up. Another $5,000 to Wheeler Consulting, buried in miscellaneous expenses. The trap was almost ready. The neighborhood meeting would be the stage to expose Karen publicly with undeniable evidence. If Linda flipped, or if the Attorney General acted, we'd have her. But I needed one final piece, something to make Karen overplay her hand, to prove she wasn't just a bully, but a liability to the HOA. I had an idea, risky, but brilliant. Bait her to trespass again, this time with witnesses.
The final preparations. The week before the neighborhood meeting felt like the final stretch of a marathon. Jenny's backyard was set for Saturday, October 28, 2023, and the gatekeepers were in overdrive. We'd collected 48 signatures on the petition to recall Karen Wheeler, 8 more than needed to force a vote. The flyers with their QR code linking to my website had spread like wildfire. Neighbors I'd never met texted me saying they'd seen the trail camera footage of Karen's trespassing or the shady financial records. "She fined me for my kid's tricycle," one wrote. "I'm in." The momentum was undeniable, but I knew Karen wouldn't go down without a fight. My trap was simple but airtight. Bait Karen into trespassing one last time, catch her on camera with witnesses, and expose her at the meeting with overwhelming evidence of her misconduct. The goal wasn't just to stop her driving through my gate, it was to strip her of power and free Sagebrush Estates from her tyranny. I spent $300 on a new security system, 2 high-definition trail cameras with live feeds to my phone, one hidden in the fake rock and another in a birdhouse I'd built with Mike. I also installed a motion-activated floodlight at the gate, bright enough to light up the whole road. If Karen or her cronies showed up, they'd be impossible to miss. I'd also heard back from the Idaho Attorney General's office. They'd opened a preliminary review of my complaint about the HOA's financial irregularities, focusing on the $13,000 paid to Wheeler Consulting LLC. It wasn't a full investigation yet, but it was pressure. Matt, my paralegal friend, said it was a good sign. If you can show public support at the meeting, they'll take it seriously. I also got a cryptic text from Linda, the nervous HOA board member. "I'll be there. Don't tell anyone." I didn't know if she'd flip, but it gave me hope. To bait Karen, I spread a rumor through Jenny's book club. They casually mentioned at the community park that I was giving up and leaving my gate unlocked for a few days to avoid more fines. It was a lie. The gate was locked tighter than ever, with a reinforced chain and a new padlock. But I knew Karen's ego would make her take the bait. My cameras caught her SUV circling the gate twice that week, testing it. She didn't try to break in, but I could tell she was tempted. The floodlight spooked her once, and I smiled watching her scowl on the live feed. The neighborhood meeting. Saturday arrived, crisp and clear, with Boise's fall leaves turning gold. Jenny's backyard was transformed. Folding chairs for 60 people, a borrowed projector screen, and a table with coffee and donuts to keep folks happy. By 4 p.m., over 70 homeowners showed up. Young families, retirees, even a few renters who'd snuck in. Mike manned the grill, keeping the mood light, while Brian passed out printed summaries of the petition and financial records. Mr. Jenkins sat in the front row, clutching his stack of Karen's threatening letters, his eyes gleaming with determination. I'd set up my laptop and projector with a 10-minute presentation ready. Trail camera footage, the county document proving my road was private, the HOA financials showing Wheeler Consulting payments, and a timeline of Karen's fines and trespassing. I'd also prepared a bombshell, an audio recording from Deputy Harris, who'd agreed to attend after seeing my latest vandalism report. He'd interviewed Karen about the gate cutting incident, and while she denied everything, her defensive tone was damning. As the meeting started, I noticed Karen's SUV parked across the street. She didn't come into Jenny's yard, but she was watching, her silhouette visible through the tinted windows. I texted Deputy Harris, who was parked nearby in an unmarked car. "She's here. Be ready." He replied, "Got eyes on her." The trap was set. I took the mic, my heart pounding but my voice steady. "Thank you all for coming," I said. "It's not just about my ranch gate. It's about an HOA that's supposed to serve us, not bully us." I started the presentation, walking through the evidence. The crowd gasped at the trail camera footage, Karen keying my sign, tossing trash, driving recklessly through my pasture. They groaned at the financials, especially the $13,000 to Wheeler Consulting. "That's our money," Mike shouted, and the crowd cheered. Then came the letters. I passed around Mr. Jenkins' collection, plus others from neighbors who'd brought their own. Karen's been threatening us for years. Fines for bird feeders, tricycles, faded mailboxes. This isn't about community standards, it's about control. Jenny stood up and read the petition, now with 52 signatures. "We're calling for a recall vote, and we want a state audit of the HOA." The applause was deafening. The trap springs. Just as I finished, my phone buzzed. A live alert from the gate camera.
Karen's SUV was at my ranch, 10 minutes away. The floodlight blazed, catching her as she got out, bolt cutters in hand. The second camera showed Tom in the passenger seat, looking nervous. I switched the projector to the live feed and the crowd fell silent, then erupted in shouts. "That's her!" Brian yelled. "She's doing it now!" Deputy Harris texted, "I'm en route." I kept the mic. "This is what we're up against," I said, pointing at the screen. "Karen's cutting my lock as we speak, thinking she's untouchable, but we're watching." The crowd was on its feet, some filming the screen with their phones. I nodded to Jenny, who called the HOA management company's emergency line, putting it on speaker. "This is Sagebrush Estates. We're witnessing a board member trespassing and vandalizing. We demand action." The rep, caught off guard, stammered, We'll investigate." Deputy Harris arrived at my ranch in minutes, his patrol car's lights flashing on the live feed. Karen froze, dropping the bolt cutters. Tom scrambled out of the SUV, shouting something inaudible. Harris approached, calm but firm, and I saw Karen gesturing wildly. The crowd cheered as he escorted her to his car for questioning. It wasn't an arrest, not yet, but it was a public humiliation she couldn't escape. The resolution. Back at the meeting, Linda stood up, her hands shaking. "I'm done," she said, her voice cracking. "Karen's been running this HOA like her personal kingdom. I've seen her push fines through without votes, and those payments to her husband's company, I didn't know until Ethan showed us." She pulled out a folder, the 2021 budget she'd hinted at, showing another $5,000 to Wheeler Consulting, approved without board discussion. "I'm resigning," she said, "and I'll testify if the state investigates." The crowd roared. Tom, who had slipped into the meeting late, tried to speak, but no one listened. Brian took the mic and proposed an emergency vote to suspend Karen and Tom from the board pending a formal recall. It passed unanimously, with even the board's 2 silent members raising their hands. Clearview Associations, spooked by the live feed and public outcry, emailed me the next day confirming the fines against me were dropped and an internal review of Karen's actions was underway. The Attorney General's office moved faster than expected. By November, they launched a full audit of Sagebrush Estates, citing credible evidence of financial mismanagement. Karen and Tom resigned before the recall vote, and Richard's law firm dropped the cease and desist. Neighbors reported Karen putting her house up for sale, and her SUV never touched my road again. I repaired my gate, added a key padlock, and invited the gatekeepers for a victory barbecue. Mr. Jenkins, grinning for the first time in months, raised the glass. "To Ethan, who took down the dragon." The aftermath. Sagebrush Estates elected a new board in December, with Jenny as president. They rewrote the covenants, limiting fines and requiring transparency. The state audit uncovered $20,000 in misallocated funds, some tied to Karen's husband, though legal action was still pending. My ranch was quiet again, Daisy and Buck grazing peacefully. Sarah hugged me one evening watching the sunset over the sagebrush. "You did it," she said. "We're free." The trap, a mix of evidence, community power, and Karen's own arrogance, had worked better than I dreamed.